Oh, thank you very much, Hilary, for that introduction, and thanks to Hilda as well for setting up my contribution quite nicely, because I'm going to be talking very much about safety in schools, not just for workers in schools, but for your children, your grandchildren as well. And Karen mentioned in the opening session about the role that my union played in shaping the debate about the safety of schools back in May and June, and we're really proud of the contribution that our members made at that time. And they continue to work all the way through the summer, not just in providing summer schools for children from vulnerable families, but also in preparing schools for a safe, wider reopening on the 1st of September. They were not helped in that regard by the late publication of DfE advice on the 28th of August, literally the eve of schools reopening. But one of the pieces of advice that was published it really is worth drawing your attention to, and it is in the chat, and that is the CONTAIN framework. So this is government advice which describes the means by which schools can manage, plan and provide for schools to remain safe places to work. And it describes 4 tiers of restrictions, not to be confused with the tiers that were announced by Boris Johnson last week. They are quite distinct, and I'll just very briefly describe them. You might be familiar. Tier 1 applies to every school in what was an intervention area, every school on the watch list, and that was students wearing masks in communal areas. Tier 2 was schools moving to a rota system in the secondary sector as a means of reducing class sizes and therefore reducing transmission. Tier 3 was secondary schools only being open on the same basis as they were during the initial lockdown, and Tier 4 was primaries being added to those arrangements. But Tier 2 is the one I want to focus on, because that's what we are currently beginning to call for, particularly in areas of high incidence. That's an option that's open to local leaders with the approval of number 10, in reality Gove and Cummings now, we think, in what they describe as exceptional circumstances. So we have to ask ourselves what are exceptional circumstances where we are now. Because 7 or 8 weeks later, we've gone from 44 cases per 100,000 in Manchester to 424 cases per 100,000. We've seen research from Princeton University in the United States that says 10 to 19-year-olds are really significant in spreading the virus. We've seen Public Health England declare that poorly ventilated spaces, which are occupied for any length of time and where there is no social distancing, no better description of classrooms occupied by 30 or more students, are really important in the spread of the virus. And we've seen the Office for National Statistics say that year 7 to year 11 students are 3 times more likely to contract the virus than the general population. So all the lies about schools not being arenas for the transmission for the virus are now being exposed, but not a single school has escalated into that tier 2 system that describes rotas that will half the number of classes, half the number of students in any class. So very briefly, we are working with local leaders, we're working with directors of public health, and we're mobilising our members to try to articulate those demands, not because we want to close schools, but because we want to guarantee some element of face-to-face provision between now and next year's exam season, and we want to avoid any stricter lockdowns, which are inevitable if we carry on as we are. We'd be grateful for your support in that. Please do refer to the document in the chat and bring up your local branches. We'd be very grateful.
Right, thank you very much indeed, Peace, and I'm sure that we'll all continue supporting the NEU in all that they have done, and that's been brilliant. So thank you very much indeed, and you could see that in the chat.